Okay, so we are doing Mishlei 10:7. Okay, and I sneak peeked this one last time, and hinted at the fact that it is that some of the Farshim say it's related to the one we did last time. We're going to take it though on its own. Okay, let's take it as though it's not related. Alrighty, so it says like this. So this is the famous one. Okay, you probably see this pasuk reference. You see this pasuk reference more often than any other pasuk in Mishlei. Zeicher tzadik livracha, v'shem resha'im yirkav. Okay, so that's why I'm saying you see it referenced. Zeicher tzadik livracha. We're familiar with that phrase appended to the end of when you mention someone who died. So how are we translating this? Zeicher tzadik livracha, v'shem resha'im yirkav. The second half you don't see as much.
Is the first word a verb or
it's a noun?
Okay, so the memory of a tzadik is for, and then I'm lost.
Okay, well, libracha, for bracha, how do you translate bracha? How would an ordinary person translate it?
Blessing.
Yeah, okay, it's for a blessing. Okay, yeah, you can't hold back the we got to get everything out on the table, right? Maybe we'll translate something differently. The Meiri of a righteous person is for a blessing. The shem resha'im yirkav. Yirkav is going to be a hard one, but shem resha'im, the name of the wicked. By the way, Donnie, you see, or not Donnie, but everyone who was here last time, you see again, this is another pasuk with tzadik singular and resha'im plural. And if you want to know why, listen to the last 10 minutes of last year, because we talked about that and read from the Rav and had ourselves a good time. The memory of righteous person is for a blessing, but the name of the wicked, yirkav. Anyone know what yirkav is?
Will rot.
Will rot. Yeah. Okay. So so that's the straight translation. There is one other way to translate zeicher. So anyone have another way to translate zeicher other than memory? And this is true anytime you see like that verb or that shorish, I mean. Anyone? So
legacy.
So that I would say legacy is good. I would say legacy is going to be in the same category as memory.
Impression, maybe.
So impression, I don't think is true. I'm trying to think of an example where I can mention that where I can. I just gave it away. Sorry. Is mention. Okay. So it's either memory or mention. Right. So for example, we call. I'm just trying to think of examples about this. Like we call names of God azkaros. Right, mentions, or let's say like in halacha, many, like for example, zechiras yitzias mitzrayim is really verbal, or like zachoras yom Shabbos l'kadsho is verbal, or remembering Amalek is verbalization. So it's recalling. In fact, all right, this is probably the best way to translate it. Okay, the recollection. This is the best way to do it. The recollection of a righteous person is for a blessing. So recollection could be mental or verbal. Okay, so I think that'll be our best like deliberately ambiguous translation here. Okay, now for those who are here for the first time, so what we do is we translate according to our translation. Then we go to the translators among the mafarshim and we use English translations just to see what else everyone else has, and then we raise the questions and problems. Okay, so let's look here. Okay, so Sadi Gaon and the Targum both do weird things here. Okay, so Sadi Gaon again translates into Arabic, and then Kafik translates it back. So he translates yirkav as yivale or yivle. I don't know exactly how to say it. Anyone know what bala is with a hey?
Swallow?
That's with an ayin.
Oh. Oops.
That's okay.
Okay.
Is it related to Yovel at all?
Interesting.
Like Jubilee? I don't know.
It's interesting. I bet there are people who do relate it, but I can't see a relationship. So will wear out. Okay. Oh, sorry, wear out. Wear out or like become worn out. Like you use it. The context. There's a pasuk in. I have a Tanakh here. Hold on. It's in Akev when Moshe is talking about how God guided them through the midbar. I think he says it here. and he says about their shoes and their garment. Anyone know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, their shoes then wore out.
Yeah, what's the lashon? I thought it says like lo balsa me'al raglecha. Hold on. Okay, I can't find where it is right now, but it was something like that, right? Like you whatever. It's like picture garments wearing out or shoes wearing out. Okay, so that's how tzadik translates it. Yeah.
Yeah, 29.5.
29.5. Okay, so let me just share that. In fact, I have to share both of these anyway. Hold on just 1 second. Sharing the entire screen. Oh, and by the way, I always forget to ask this, or not to ask this. That's too strong. I definitely, if anyone's wondering whether I appreciate cameras on or cameras off, I definitely appreciate cameras on. No pressure to do that. I know that some people have doing lots of things or whatever, but it is so much easier to talk to people. Panim el panim. What pasuk did you say?
29.5.
Oh, 29.5. That's why I couldn't find it. I was in the wrong part of Devarim. 29.5 is lechem lo achaltem v'yaim v'shekar lo shesizim l'man.
Sorry,
Wait.
hold on.
Oh no, it's 29.5.
In the Rashi, or is it in a?
Oh no, it's in the Devarim.
Oh, I see.
So did not your garments did not wear out from upon you. Oh, it is both of them. It is your shoes and your garments. Let's just click on this to see how the Ala Torah Shorashim dictionary translates it. Pardon the delay. Balu is from Bala, and it says to become old and worn out. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So why decide you're going to translate it as wear out when rot was perfectly normal? Good question. I don't know. And he's not the only one who does it. Okay. The Targum says like this: Duchrana de tzadiki birchasa. So that's just a straight up translation. The memory or the recollection of tzadikim is I guess he says is blessing, not for blessing. Okay. So that is different. So the recollection of a righteous person is a blessing. Okay. Ushma de rashie nidach, and the name of the wicked will be extinguished. Okay, so I don't get why. I would understand if it was using a metaphor and then they interpreted the metaphor in their translation, but they're replacing one metaphor with another one. Okay, so we have will rot, will wear out, or will be extinguished. So just keep that in mind. Okay, then last translation thing here is Art Scroll says, remembrance of a righteous one brings blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. Living Nach says, memory of the righteous man is for a blessing, but the name of the wicked rots. Okay, that's just basically what we said. And Alter says, the memory of the righteous is for a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. That's basically what we said. And I'm going to delete Art Scroll because I think that's close enough to what we said. Yeah. Okay, so what are the questions and problems here? Lay them on me.
What is the comparison between rotting and being a blessing?
Okay, what is the comparison between being a blessing and rotting, right? Because are these intended to be opposites? Because if you were writing it in opposites, what would you have? How would you have written the pasuk? I can think of two other ways to write the pasuk if you written as straight opposites. What's the opposite of blessing?
Lo levracha.
I think we have a
L'klala.
word for that. L'klala, right? So the blessing, the memory of a righteous is for blessing, and the name of the wicked will be for a curse. Or if you're going to go with the rotting thing, and what would you have said instead of livracha for a blessing? Maybe.
L'chaim.
Okay, l'chaim. If you're thinking that reveals to me. Okay, this actually is another question. Okay, what kind of rot? Okay, so Leah, why did you say l'chaim?
Because I kind of imagine rot as like a plant rotting.
Oh, see, that's interesting. Oh, fine. Okay, so maybe my mind was somewhere else. Yeah. Anyone have a different kind of rot in their mind?
Deteriorating. Like a body decaying?
Yeah, I was thinking of a body decaying, right? Is it plant rot? Is it corpse rot? Okay, is it like I think wood rot, right? Like wood, not just in a living plant. Yeah. So I guess depending on which of those you say. So if you go with the plant rot, then it would be l'chaim, or for like, some idea of like verdant flourishing, some planty type plant happy word. If it's corpse rot, then you could say like will be alive, or you could say is like, lush, whatever you want to say. Okay, fine. So what kind of rot?
How
Good.
is zeicher contrasted with shame?
Okay, yes. What is the relationship? And I'm just going to phrase it as relationship so as to not say that it's a contrast specifically, right?
Okay.
So what is the,
Yeah.
just because there could be different relationships. What is the relationship between name of the righteous? Sorry, not name of the righteous. Recollection of the righteous and name of the wicked. Yeah. Okay, good.
Also, like, why are there 3 different ways to describe how a wicked person, like we said, the extinguished, raw, and then there was one more, I think, right? Unless I'm wrong. Oh, where out?
Sorry. Just what for your, which one are you talking about for rot?
Yeah, like why are there 3 different interpretations, like 3 different ways to explain what?
Yeah. Okay. So what? So I guess let's put it this way. What is the correct? What are the differences between?
Where are the nuances coming from?
Yeah, the 3 translations of yirkav. Okay, which is i.e. rot, wear out, and be extinguished. And I guess the only reason I was thrown off by the question is it's possible that these are all like in line with the same idea and they're just nuances, like Shane later just said, or it's possible that these are 3 different interpretations, 3 different translations, and we'll just have to interpret the pasuk differently according to all 3 of them. So it remains to be seen. Yeah.
Who is the blessing on? Is it on the tzadik himself, or is
good.
it?
Okay. So who gets the blessing? Okay. Is it for the tzadik? Is it for others? If the latter, who? Okay, good.
What's the bracha? Could be a question.
Yeah. Okay, good. And what is the bracha? What is the blessing? What is the blessing? Yeah. In fact, I'm going to put that one before this because it's primary. Yeah.
Maybe why or what's the significance of it using is a blessing for the tzadik and then will rot for the rasha, like it's being present and future.
Okay, I like that question. Okay, so why is, let's see, why, I'm just going to put it the way you asked it. Why does it say, livracha is for a blessing versus yirkav will rot, right? Which is like an action.
Also,
and hold on
can you also ask
is
if,
for
if
blessing,
it's like,
which is a description. All right, yeah. Sorry, what was that?
can you also ask if it's for meaning if it's like forever, meaning not specific to them being alive?
Okay, yeah. So let's just say, when do these
Apply.
consequences happen? Yeah, happen.
Who is the audience?
Yeah, who is the audience of this pasuk?
Also ask who the rot is impacting, because we asked
Yes.
like what the who the bracha was for.
Okay, good. So what is the? So we never actually listed what is the metaphor of rot. Okay, so what is the metaphor of rotting? Okay, and you know what? I'm actually gonna put this question under that one, along with this. We'll put these as sub questions here. What is the metaphor of rotting? What kind of rot? And then, sorry, what are the differences between the 3 translations? And then the question is like who cares about this rot? Why is this, in what sense is this a negative consequence? In what sense is this a negative consequence? Yeah.
And how can a name rot?
Yeah, names,
Names
yeah,
don't
okay, good.
rot.
Yeah, so I'm gonna add that as a sub question here, okay, which is the, okay, how can a name rot? Okay, yeah, good.
Did we ask what a tzadik and what a rasha is?
No, we didn't. Okay, good question. All right, so what, I'm just gonna put those in the same question. What is a tzadik in this context, and what is a rasha? And since we had tzadik in rasha last time, I'm just gonna say the same thing that we did before, just to reinforce the point. Sometimes Mishlei uses these terms in technical jargon ways, and there's a specific definition, and sometimes it just uses it as like a stand-in for like the good guy and the bad guy.
Rabbi
right.
Shneewald,
Yes, Leslie.
isn't it funny that you have this pasuk and then you have Parsha Zachar, that you have a chiyuv to mention?
Oh,
Molech?
yeah, right. Yeah, that's more of a question on that's like an after question, right? Like if we're making a big deal, like the implication is that the name of the rasha will not well, it's not that they won't be remembered, it's that the memory will not be a blessing, right?
But and then you also have Haman, right?
Right.
And that's remembered, and every year with Megillus Esther.
Right. Yeah. So what's your question?
So, in other words, it didn't really wear out, and it wasn't extinguished.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. So let's just put this under the. Let's just put this under a general question: is this pasuk true? Okay. Meaning, what
Is
about?
there a word for notoriety in Hebrew? Because maybe this is
like infamous.
yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll. I don't know if there's a word in Hebrew, but even if there isn't, then we'll have to see if the concept applies. Okay. So I think. Yes.
Just two things. One is the question about the tension between the mitzvah of Zachar and this new kind of notion is the parsha itself says so, right? That we have to obliterate them and destroy them. So it's not, it's going to be the same thing. You have the same problem, just a general question between Amalek.
Right. It says you should wipe out the memory of Amalek, right?
Correct. Yeah. The other thing is just a question of the zeicher tzadik versus shem resha'im. Why is it the name of the rasha versus the memory of the tzadik?
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that was.
Yeah, I think, did we not write that one?
I thought so too, but then.
Yeah, I did think we said that, but I guess we didn't write it. Oh yeah, we did 4. Oh, well, so what's the relationship between them? Yeah. Why does it say? Why does it pair each term with its respective person? That's like a really messed up way to ask the question. Okay. All right. Anyway. Yeah. Okay. And also, while we're asking extraneous questions, if we're gonna muse about Amalek, I don't think that's a main question, but it'd be nice if this shed light on that. I also just want to know, like, why do Jews not? I don't mean this in a historical way. Like, people. What do people say when they mention Hitler's name? Most people. They say Yimach Shemo, right? They don't say Shem resha'im yirkav, So like this is my personal liking. I want to either resuscitate Shem resha'im yirkav, or understand like I want to understand like what the difference is between Yimach Shemo just means that his name should be erased, which I guess creates the same type of problems that we were saying with Amalek. Like, well, if you want his name erased, then don't keep talking about him,
It seems like descriptive though. Like I feel like the Shem resha'im yirkav sounds like it's musing about a phenomena as opposed to a call to action.
Yeah,
to remember or to
true,
forget.
Right, but we do say this about tzadik though. We say zichron livracha, or zeicher tzadik livracha.
We do, but perhaps that could play into the difference between zeicher and shem.
Could be. So speaking of the difference between zeicher and shem, let's try to interpret the pasuk now. Okay, I'm gonna move these below so we can try to get everything on screen.
Rabbi Shneewald?
Yeah.
Does this remind you of the Gemara that says you should, mention, the Torah in that specific name of the individual who made it, like b'shem.
Like Dever b'shem Omro.
Yeah. Is that similar to that?
I don't immediately think so. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. I wouldn't jump there just because it doesn't even use the same language,
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So where do we begin here? Where does it make sense to begin?
Maybe what's the bracha versus.
Okay. I would either say what's the bracha or what's the zeicher, and I think you kind of have to tackle those questions at the same time, right? And let's for now assume that tzadik is just a general word for a good person or a person who's involved in tzedek, like a person who's involved in justice. And I think I mentioned this in passing in other pasukim we did about tzadikim, that tzadikim are people who are doing what is best for the individuals in the system for the sake of the system. Okay, that's like a basic definition of tzadik in Mishlei. Okay, so what would the idea be of let's try. So we're trying to answer what is the mention and what is the bracha, and that's going to have to be like who's doing the mentioning, who's getting the bracha. What's the deal here? And you got to balance this as you're thinking about it. You got to balance this with the name of the wicked rotting, because that's going to be the opposite, right? So it's the old juggling act, of keeping the opposites in mind and playing them off of each other.
Maybe just to start off, you could say that the tzadik is someone who you want to be eternal.
Okay.
Versus the rasha, you want him to be deceased.
Okay.
Or
is there a reason why you're going to eternal or temporal, like time?
Yeah.
You asked that earlier also.
I did.
Yeah, you asked.
Because that's where my mind is going.
I mean, maybe your mind's just going there because we use this about death a lot, right? Because we say zeicher tzadik bracha for someone who's died. We could take that route. I just want to see. I want to make sure that it's coming organically from the pasuk.
It's
I like my
organically in my mind. I'm serious. But
where are you getting from in the words though?
Recollection.
Okay. All right. So that's okay. Good. All right. So that is an organic basis, right? So recollection, it often implies that the person only exists in the past and is no longer present, right? So when you recall a tzadik, then it's livracha. Okay. Good. And what did you say about it? Now that I got past that hurdle.
I was saying that, like you said, recollection implies history.
Yeah.
We want his legacy to live on, or his memory, or his name, or whatever it is. And with the rasha, you want him to rot, or be,
Okay, so maybe this is a good place to then think about what it means that the name of the rasha rots, and how can a name rot, right? So, or should we flesh out the bracha part more? Yeah, Pnia?
When I saw it, I originally saw rot and the recollection. I also came to a similar conclusion.
Yeah.
But with rot, it reminds me of more of entropy, where it's naturally going to fade away, while recollection is more eternal.
Yeah. Okay. So I definitely hear that for the rot.
Can I add to it?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So with the zeicher tzadik livracha, I think we're emphasizing that the tzadik would persist. But what does that mean? Because the tzadik is aligned with God's will. So it's not so much about the tzadik as it is about the zeicher and the shem. So a zeicher tzadik livracha, the tzadik is aligned with truth, and that element is eternal. Whereas the shem, resha'im, yirkav, since it's not tied to something outside of itself in truth, it would naturally rot away.
Okay, that was a little too deep for me. Okay, a lot of it sounded like you got a lot of good ideas in there, but let's just take it really, really slow. Okay, zeicher tzadik livracha. Okay, so we're saying zeicher means recollection, and we're saying it's someone who's died. In what sense does that bring bracha, and to whom? Let's just try that. See what naturally follows from that. So what happens when you remember? Let's try it right now. Okay, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Yosef Dov Levi Soloveitchik, Moshe Rabbeinu, Shlomo Melech. What's happening? Okay, so we're remembering the tzaddikim, right? Anyone getting bracha? So what's the bracha then? And what actually? Let's actually even do a more basic question. What does the word bracha, strictly speaking, mean?
What do you mean by that, strictly speaking?
What's the dictionary definition of bracha?
Oh.
The Torah
Like
dictionary.
a good,
Mishlei
a good, I
definition?
guess.
No, just the word bracha in Tanakh.
Like a good, like a positive.
Yeah. So bracha means
Help you
good.
fulfill Torah.
So
Help
bracha.
you live the true life.
Okay, that's more of a specific thing, I think, right? Living the true life, but bracha. So I've seen this in many Rishonim, but the one who says it the most that I've seen is the Ralbag. Bracha means tosefes tov. It means increase of good. Okay. So as opposed to, let's say, a permanence of good, you use bracha when you say like the good increase. Yes, Suzanne?
I was gonna say, like, in general, especially when a really big tzadik dies, we usually try to take things upon, like, if they were very good at a certain midah, like, we'll take that midah upon ourselves and work on it.
Okay, good. Hold on to that example because I think that example will come in handy. Let's again. We're going to take it one step at a time. So we have remembering a tzaddik is for bracha. Okay, and bracha means an increase of good. Okay, so in what sense does good increase when you remember a tzaddik? Now, actually, maybe Suzanne, maybe this is where that stuff comes in. Okay, just do me a favor. See if you can say it from the pasuk instead of saying it from like something that we experience. Because you're saying people do this, right? But people do a lot of things, right? So can we get an idea like from the pasuk, So what happens when you remember a tzaddik? And how's that for a brother? Yeah.
When you remember a tzadik, you usually remember their past and you remember what they've done. So you look back on that and then I don't know if I'm going back to.
No, that's good, right? So when someone remembers a tzaddik, they remember the good things that they did and the good qualities that they had and the good impact that they had. Okay, yeah. And what is that? So can we interpret what livracha means for that? Because that's just zeicher tzaddik. If you didn't have livracha, you would still say that, yeah. I don't know who was talking just now.
Oh, someone else can answer. I'm still thinking.
Oh, sure, yeah. Anyone can jump in.
Maybe to add on to what she was saying, I mean,
yeah,
maybe you could say that the bracha is so that we can model ourselves after them.
Okay, so I think that is a good move. So when you remember a tzaddik, then you remember their good qualities, and at the very least, you are like promoting or advancing those same qualities in your mind. If you talk about it, if we're learning this as recollection, like verbal recollection, then you're going to be talking about the good things that they did, and that's promoting the good that they embodied, and it's going to cause that influence to persist in some way, right? Like the good that they did is going to, like, I mean, look what we're doing right now. We're talking about, I mean, we're not talking about Shlomo HaMelech, but like essentially that's what we're doing, right? And all of the good that he embodied, which he wrote down in Mishlei, is continuing to like ripple throughout the ages and continuing to affect people and promoting those same qualities, So I think that at a very, very basic level, I think that's what zeicher tzadik livracha means, is whether you're saying is a mental recollection or a verbal recollection. When you bring up a tzaddik, you're bringing up what they represented and what their life is. And that in turn inspires you, motivates you, enables you to learn from them. And that brings an extra good into the world that you are inhabiting through your actions or through your values. Okay, I think that's like a good basic idea. All right. Any objections? No, I'm not saying it's the only idea, but I think that is a good idea.
Also, if you add in like the time thing that Ariel was saying,
yeah,
you could say that like by having the tzaddik in your mind at the forefront, then you're gonna be like constantly doing things that are good. And then to contrast that with the wicked person, will is kind of like in the future, like it's not like constant, it's like will, which will perish eventually.
Okay, so now let's take what Leah is saying and like transition to the Russia now, right? So the name of the Russia will rot. So I think this actually, when something about what you're saying made this light up in my mind, Leah. Maybe it's because, did you ask this question of the is for a blessing and will rot? Who asked that question? Yeah, so maybe that's why I associated to this. So what's interesting is like this: the way we're explaining livracha is that it is affecting other people, right? The tzaddik is dead, but the tzaddik's values are like radiating outwards, okay? But with the Russia, that's not happening, okay? And instead, the Russia's name is rotting. So now can we explain that in light of this as an opposite?
I wanted to just ask something to think about. Now, what's the difference when the tzaddik is alive versus when he's dead? Wouldn't you say that he's still influencing people when he's alive?
Right. So I think so. Maybe this is So there's two ways to answer this, right? So the question is like, why are we confining it to when he's dead? Doesn't he also influence people when he's alive? So the easiest answer. Yeah.
Who said he's dead? You said you could recall people when they're alive.
That's true, right? You could recall people there. Yeah. So the two easy ways to answer the question are saying that the entire pasuk is talking about when they've died, okay? Because presumably the name of the Russia is not going to rot while he's alive, unless we explain rot in a different way. I mean, I guess I was thinking if you're the decomposition thing. I don't know. Or you could say that of course the tzaddik influences people when he's alive. You don't need a pasuk to say that, but the chiddush, the new insight is that even when he's dead, then he's going to continue to have that effect. But let's hold off on that question right now until let's just get the second half right now and see where that takes us.
Building off of Suzanne's idea for the second half of the pasuk, I feel like if the recollection of a tzaddik brings bracha, shouldn't the recollection of a rasha also bring bracha because you see what not to do? I feel like it's so much more obvious that someone's lifestyle brought negativity,
Right. So I think my two answers to that question, one is a linguistic answer, and I'm not sure about this answer, but I feel like I don't know if that's bracha. Bracha is an increase of good, not a removal of bad.
Okay.
Again, that's just my intuition. I don't know if that's actually true. The other thing is that I don't know if the proportion of the influence is the same. Okay, for example, when you talk about a tzaddik who you knew, let's just use an example of a tzaddik who you knew, there is emotion to aspire to model yourself after that person, whereas when people bring up Hitler, I don't think it's
it's just a name.
It's not well, I was gonna go out and commit genocide, but once you said Hitler, now I'm gonna avoid that, it's again, maybe I'm just using Hitler as an extreme example, but with resha'im, it's, I don't know, in other words, the tzadik has this inspirational effect, but I feel like the deterrent effect of the Russia is not proportional to that, which is why it doesn't use a similar term of it doesn't put the emphasis on him impacting people,
It's less active.
On the name rotting, yeah.
Because if it's just the name rotting, then perhaps it's just reduced to the name, whereas with zeicher, it's more active, where it's tzadik and what he did, as opposed to the shem, which is just reducing them to a word and not their lifestyle.
Okay, I'm still operating with the premise. You're again. This is a thing that we this is methodology divergence in Mishlei, right? Is things that are synonyms. Do we treat them as synonyms, or do we look at the nuances? Okay. Your mind is always wired to go to the nuances. Yeah. I'm just full disclosure. I'm treating them as synonyms right now. The name and the recollection, until I find evidence otherwise. All right, so let's just explain this. So, what does it mean that the name rots? We still haven't said that.
Rabbi Shameless?
Yeah.
Something you said sparked something. It's interesting how they use the term rot, and not it's gonna die out, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you could say another question that we should have I think we should have asked was why is the term rot? Because rot implies that it's still there, but it's it's not completely gone.
Yeah.
So
okay. Good.
You could say that really. Well, what do you mean? I mean, you could even have Hitler who has his own philosophy and it may speak to some people. So his name will still be someone in existence, but it won't completely die out. Maybe not to the masses.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. So I think that actually helps us though, right? Because if you're saying, so if you're saying rotting, so again, this kind of gets to the question, what kind of rot? Okay. There are things that rot and then eventually completely decompose. But then what you're saying is more like a thing that just becomes rotted, and it's just sitting like a rotted wood or a rotted tree, not like it vanishes. So it's there, but it's like in this disgusting inferior state, to what it used to be, So this now I think leads to a full idea. Okay. Can we now put this together to say, what is the main idea of the pasuk? Because I think this is my Mishlei spidey sense is saying that this is, we're at the point where now we're ripe for saying an idea.
Yeah, I just want to jump in right before that point and add something that just strikes me when I think about rotting is that rotting gets progressively worse as it goes on. The first day leaving out a fruit on the counter, it'll get a little brown. And then, you'll have like some juice starting to leak out and then you get the flies and it gets worse as it goes on.
Okay. I'll tell you why I like that. Okay. Because I think, and I know you're only talking about the rotting. It is interesting. Okay. I think for the tzadik, this happens in reverse. Okay. Which is, people my age will know about this. Okay. But there was a book that came out that was very scandalous in the early 2000s called The Making of a Guddle.
Yeah. Worth $500, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great book.
So, yeah. So it was a book about, I think about Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky.
I think it's about a lot of Gedolim.
Yeah. But it was by a Kamenetsky, I think. By Rav Nassim Kamenetsky. I forgot who. Anyway, it was about these Gedolim of the previous generation. Okay, and these great Jewish leaders, and it was you have what are sometimes derisively called art scroll biographies, which is I haven't read art scroll biographies, so I don't know if this is true or not. But the way people say it is like they kind of like make these tzaddikim into saints, like when he was making cookies, he he made all of them into the shapes of like things from Shas. I don't know what they say, but like they exaggerate like all the good qualities that the tzaddikim did. And what this biography did is it portrayed them as real people. Like I remember one of the controversial things was it like quoted excerpts of like love poetry that one of the guys wrote to his the girl he was dating, who he eventually married, and like another one, there's another book that we have in our yeshiva called My Uncle the Netziv, which is also a book that I guess has controversy, where it would say how I think something to the equivalent, I don't know if it was exactly this, that he would read the newspaper on Shabbos or something like that, so what happens though is when as time goes by, then the Russia's, each of the memories become what's the word I'm looking for? Not stylized, but and not exaggerated, mythologized, So the evil people become mythologized for bad, and their bad faults become extremely exaggerated. And the tzaddikim, because people are only talking about their good qualities, it becomes magnified, Now, again, I'm not saying that that's all good or all bad, but it's good in the sense that the reason why people are talking about the tzaddikim is for a didactic reason, is to learn, to teach people and to learn from them. So talking about their qualities, you look at any of the figures in Tanakh, we are not, the pasukim and Chazal don't portray them as living, breathing people. They portray them as highly, educational paradigms, for teaching good midos and good decisions and the reverse, So that's a good observation, Joe, is that I think the resha'im thing gets worse and I think the tzadik gets better. And maybe that's even an element of the bracha of being an increase of good. Okay, could we put together the whole idea now? What's the subject of the pasuk? What do you say based on the way we approach it? What is the subject? And I think someone said this actually earlier when we were translating the pasuk. One word subject. You don't have to say one word, but
legacy.
Legacy, yes, exactly, right. So I think this is legacy, right? That everyone wants a legacy, right? You know, if you want me to, I can quote the. I don't need to quote the pasuk, but people feel like they're going to live forever. You know, I'll quote the pasuk because I love this pasuk so much. Those who were in the Koheles shiur, Zichron Livracha, will remember this Ibn Ezra. That the pasuk says, it's in Perek Gimel of Koheles, pasuk Yud Aleph. Es hakol asa yafa beito. God made everything beautiful in its time. Gam es haolam nasan belibam. He also placed olam in their hearts. Now, olam in rabbinic Hebrew, which is what we're used to, Baruch atah Hashem melech haolam, olam means world or universe. But in biblical Hebrew, olam means eternity. So what it says in Hebrew, sorry, not in Hebrew, in Ibn Ezra, this is Rashi, that's why I'm not finding it. In Ibn Ezra, it says, oh, look, I even highlighted it. People go about life as though they will live forever. Okay, and then he gives the what do you call it? The implication of that for the pasuk. Oh, yeah, we don't really need to go into this, but the point is that people feel like they're going to live forever, and when they realize that they're not going to live forever, they wish that they have a legacy. You know, and it's a human emotion. Like you can't really get around it in many ways. But what Mishlei is giving you is the Mishleic approach to legacy. Okay, so the tzadik actually lives forever. Okay, how so?
Through his righteousness.
Through his righteousness is that, talk to Avraham and you'd say, Avraham, what do you want the most in life? What do you want to leave behind? He would say, I want people to follow after my path in knowledge of God and in chesed, tzedakah, and mishpat. And that's what God allowed him to do, is he made a covenant with him and then allowed him to have descendants that carried on that lifestyle. And Abraham's not doing it for egotistical reasons. This is what he truly values for the world. So what he wants his imprint on the world to last, not because it's him, but because it's good. And that actually will last if you live the life of a tzaddik. The Rasha, though, what does he want his legacy to be? And maybe this will be the piece we were missing. What type of legacy do resha'im tend to want?
Fame. Yeah,
fame, power, glory, domination, dominion. Like they want. So what is the difference between the type of legacy that the tzaddik wants and the type of legacy that the Rasha wants? This is a very interesting thing.
Egotistical.
It's egotistical, right? So the Rasha's legacy is entirely tied to himself, right? And that's what fuels his entire life, okay? And guess what happens when he dies? What happens to his legacy?
Starts to deteriorate.
So it not only starts to deteriorate, right? But there's a certain thing that is going to instantly deteriorate because
his
the entire legacy.
Gone.
Say again, Chandler?
The ego is gone, therefore everything else follows.
Yeah, the self is gone, so it can't outlast it can't truly outlast the self. In other words, Avraham's real legacy is his ideas and the justice and the chesed and the righteousness, and that actually goes on, But the Rasha's legacy of I am famous and I am king and I am this and I am that ends upon his death. Okay. And then it's even worse, though. There's only one thing that's worse. Actually, you can argue about this, right? But arguably, one thing that's worse than being forgotten is being remembered as something like bad and disgusting, And because of the Rasha's lifestyle, again, I'm not saying that this is going to be necessarily true for every Rasha, but the resha'im who succeed in their evil the most, who live lives where they're oppressing other people and taking advantage of other people, and creating societies where they're trampling on others in order to get their own needs, they will be remembered as oppressive dictators who harmed a bunch of people around them, and their legacy will be tainted. So when this guy's on his, I don't know how many resha'im actually recognize this, probably not that many, but what's going to happen is the thing that there's like this. Let's just summarize here. So the tzaddik wants to live on, not for himself, but for his values. He wants his values to live on, and that will happen, and people will attach it to the person himself. They'll remember the tzaddik and it will be for bracha. They'll remember, oh, so-and-so lived such a good life and these were their ideas and we learned from them, et cetera, et cetera. And then the Rasha, who's trying to create a legacy that centers around the self, the self won't last, and the legacy will start to crumble from that, and he'll be remembered for bad because the entire trajectory of his life up until death was like hurting people and trampling on others and being unjust, you know? So is that good? Yeah. Okay, anyone want to add to anything? Because if not, then,
this question of the balance or not balance in terms of zeicher and shem, but we don't really think they're balanced. There's a balance of opposites as well. I mean, why resha'im's obviously opposite. Yirkav is going to meant to be an opposite in the sense that it's getting worse or fading or both.
Right.
So then why wouldn't you assume or treat it that shem and zeicher should have that same sort of, I guess, antagonism?
You could. I'm not going to hold it against you if you want to interpret it that way. I just was saying that my default was to assume that they were synonyms.
Right. Okay. I mean, it seems like it also works out to go the other way, right? Because it's really just the name, like dafka the name, and every time they're mentioned, whereas, right. You know, and all associated, and it just gets worse and worse, where we strip away any memory of anything they've ever done good, because no one talks about the good things the evil people did when they were younger.
Right.
Nobody, you know, it's not even thought about. So they literally become demonized over time. And just exactly. Their identity.
Right. Yeah. I think Malbim says something like that. We can check it out in a second. Okay, so let's look at a couple of mafarshim, because since we have time now. This idea I think was more within our grasp than last time, or it came quicker than previous times. Okay, so let's look at the Meiri. I put in my notes from the summer that the Meiri had a good idea. Okay, so let's see. Zeicher tzadik livracha. Hold on just a second. Yeah, so the memory of a tzadik is for blessing. B'shem resha'im yirkav. Yedua sheharekev hu siba lihimachus tsuras hadavar v'la'avod zichro. So it is known that rot is something which causes an erasure of the form of something and a loss of its memory. Okay. V'amar, I guess take the rotting fruit, right? Is that at a certain point the fruit becomes less and less like a fruit, you know, you know, or if you want the corpse. Okay. V'amar ki pulas hatzadik tamid zichro la'ad. It says the actions of the tzaddik will literally set up his memory forever. Ka'amram zal, like the Chazal say, tzaddikim afilu b'misasam kruim chaim, that the righteous, even in their death, are called alive. V'chachmei hamusar amru, the sages of ethics say, lo meis mi shehechyuhu devarav. No one dies whose words keep him alive. That's interesting. Right. So in other words, if you are continually quoting someone's words, then that keeps their memory alive. Right.
That's like how we always quote when we speak, like we say Rashi says.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We that is Leah, we got to add that to our list of Yiddishisms that we had this morning in English. Right. Like speaking about dead people as though they're alive. I feel like Jews do that
saying more. Someone like holds an idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Ki zichro yodia v'farsin hasmadas chayav, because his memory or his recollection, I'm not sure how he's using it, will make known and publicize the hasmadas chayav b'chayim, the perpetuity of his life during his lifetime, shehim ikar chayim, which is the essence of life. I just got to read it and figure out what he's saying. Es halach lifnei Hashem be'artzos chayim. I will walk before Hashem in the land of the living. Aval shem harisha'im v'takvam, but the name of the wicked and their power. Oh, so he also puts in terms of power. Yihye kadavar yasigeno harekev. It will be like something that will receive rot. Shabihimachus atzura nimche shemo v'avad zichro. That when his form is erased, his name will be erased, and his memory will be lost. V'yish b'zeh he'aratorius. Okay, so this is giving us a Torah lesson. Lehizacher beito maseh tzadikim letov uliyaches lehem bracha v'chaim ad ha'olam. So this is slightly different than the way we were saying it. Is when we mention tzadikim we should mention them lizacher beito maseh tzadikim, to mention the actions of tzadikim in their times. Letov uliyaches lehem bracha, for good, and to ascribe to them blessing, v'chaim ad ha'olam, and life forever. Kadesh yilmedu hashamim inenam, so that the listeners will learn from their actions. Okay, so this is like what we're saying. This part is same thing with the evil. She has kirun be'itam lara. You should mention them at their time for bad. And ascribe to them cursing and rot. Okay. Yeah, what was that?
I just I want to circle back to Shana Leah's point here, because it seems like when you talk about a Russia and his evil deeds, you can use him as a cautionary tale. And even in the specific example of Acher, for example, it talks about Acher and it says like al tamin ba'atzmcha yomoschad, like it gives an example of what you shouldn't do.
Right.
So we're remembering Acher specifically as a cautionary tale of what you shouldn't do. We're not saying, oh, curse Acher, he was terrible. We're saying this is what you shouldn't be. So his name is remembered for us to avoid the pitfalls of what he fell into.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that. And I think that does fit into the words, not the way that Shana Leah initially said of like that is also for a blessing, but I think that fits into the words of rot, of like ascribing rot to their name, of like bringing them up as an example of people who are horrible, like, and that is the fate of the real resha'im of the world. Like everyone, for at least the next, presumably the next couple hundred years at the very least, will only, I hope, will only mention Hitler as an example of like one of the worst resha'im, of like one of the most evil, corrupt people, and so they're only brought up as examples of the negative as a cautionary tale, like you're saying. So maybe that's the rot. This is the thing I'm not understanding about the Meiri, by the way. I don't know if anyone else is having this trouble. Let's read it and we'll go back. Hold on, and then I'll say what's bothering me. Is he saying
that we should be ascribing negativity to them? That,
yeah, we should he's saying that that's the rot. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Like the remembering of the exodus from Egypt, Inyan Mordechai Esther and Mordechai and Esther, V'chashmonai, timely, right? The Chashmonaim, Ubanav, V'hadomi Lahem, Leilu, Zachor, Leslie, looky here. Zachor Es Asher Asah Lecha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did, right? Macho Emche Zeicher Amalek. I will surely wipe out the memory of Amalek. Hine Shetiva Bezechiras Inyano Uvemechias Zichro. God commanded us in remembering his character and in the erasure of his memory. Ki has karaso oso lara hu machayev zichro. Because the mentioning of him for evil necessitates his recollection. Ukvar noda inyanav achzarius hagadol. He's already known in his great cruelty. Asher karcha baderach and ad ve'ata ayviyageh. So here's what I'm not understanding about the Meiri. On the one hand, he seems to be treating rot as like bringing them up for the negative to learn from their bad actions. But then why did he say all the stuff about rotting being like the form is being erased and their name is being lost? Like, it seems almost.
I wanted to say that you guys are saying like the evil person is like completely evil, but there's a lot of people that, when they die, the people that wasted their life. And when we think of those people dying, it makes a lot of people like really depressed because it's, like everything that they were attached to in life is gone. So I think that emotion maybe kind of makes a person want to forget about them. So it doesn't have to be like the worst evil that you remember what not to do, but something that really brings, brings all the negative feelings about death versus a person who lived life properly. When they die, it's not really like you don't really feel like they're dead. I mean, you're not in the same way. Not in the same way.
I agree with the truth of what you're saying, but I just don't think that is what the pasuk is talking about, because number one, it says resha'im, not just like fools or people who wasted their lives. And the way that we're going is like the real opposite of the effect for the side. I mean, I understand you're saying it's a more like localized opposite, like person who lives a worthy life and a person who lives like an unworthy life. I don't know. To me, the implication in the pasuk is it's talking about the wicked, not just like the mediocre. So I agree with the truth of what you're saying. I just don't agree with that as an interpretation.
I apologize. What's your question?
My question is, the Meiri several times in this commentary says that rotting means that the form of the thing is erased and its memory is lost. Okay. But then he keeps on going back to the practical lesson here is you should bring up the resha'im and ascribe bad actions to them and ascribe curses and rotting, which makes it sound like their memory is not going to fade away and it is not going to be lost.
Well, maybe is it possible that's the idea of the pasuk according to him? Is that like naturally they would just fade away, so you should make sure that they don't, so that you can learn from them?
That's interesting.
I mean, like just like tzadikim naturally, I don't know why exactly, but tzadikim naturally people are going to remember them, but not resha'im.
Yeah, the only weird thing I would say about that, I don't know, because so is he saying when he says the name of the wicked will rot, is that describing what happens or what you should do?
Yeah, so I'm saying according to him, it's what happens naturally.
So, but then I don't get what he means when he says here, Shias kirum lara uliyaches lehem klala v'rikavon, that you should mention.
That's the pasuk's message. That's the pasuk's. That's the pasuk's. That's the point of the pasuk. The pasuk's making the observation, but recalling it, or now making the idea for us to then embrace it because of the very idea. Because that's true. Because of that reality, it's important that we should sort of use it as a means of teaching and instructing and inspiring and motivating others, and sort of just embrace that phenomena. But it's naturally going to occur because the fruit, everything Russia aspired is not being remembered, right? It's his evil that's being remembered. All that mattered, all the things he acquired, he lived and died for himself. That's not. No one's looking at his marvels of his accomplishments. It's the rishus, which is the whole thing he's saying you should focus on constantly, even while they're alive.
Okay, again, I understand what the pasuk is doing, but I'm still caught up on the word will rot. It does will rot mean avad zichro, his memory will be lost, or avad zichro, his memory will be lost, nimche shemo, his name will be erased, or does it mean that you should attach rot to his name, like he's saying here? What I'm getting from the pasuk and from the overall Meiri is it's saying we should ascribe rot to his name, but that doesn't mean his memory will be erased.
It's his memory as he would have wanted it.
Okay. So if his memory as he would have liked it is erased, that I can live with, right? So maybe that actually fits into his words here because he does say aval shem resha'im v'takfam yihye kadavar hayisagina harekev. So the name of the wicked and their power is something that will suffer rotting.
Yeah, I was thinking somewhere along those type of lines where I was thinking of that basically part of the rot is like while the guy is alive, there's a certain force of the personality, and there could even be like an attraction to that type of personality.
Right.
And then basically after they're dead, you kind of see, that's all gone, and all that's left is basically, that positive part of, the certain attraction or the fantasy to that, Russia lifestyle or whatever. You see kind of like, it's almost like, what's it, the shiur hamisaleach or something, right? So basically, right? So basically, and that kind of, so once, I mean, in my head, it's kind of like, the guy, the Russia died basically, and then basically all that's left, what's left of him after, the force of his personality is gone. When you look back on his lifestyle, everything else kind of rotted away to some degree.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. So it is almost interesting again how the parallel strikes, because with the tzadik, since the tzaddik's personality embodied his ideas, like then talking about the ideas perpetuates the personality in a way, whereas with the Russia, it is like the opposite, like you're saying, in a certain sense of the all the particulars of their persona are kind of like fade with them.
I feel like with this explanation of the pasuk, it makes it more practical, because the first definition, I don't know if anyone here is a tzadik, like per se. So also a tzadik, I don't think that they want necessarily to have like a legacy. That sounds like a gitron.
Right. So that's why I was trying to make the argument that the legacy that they want is not that they live on, but that their ideas live on because their ideas are good. You know, like, and again, we
It's
see
not
that with
even just
Abraham.
their ideas, though. I feel like we keep putting it back that it's them. They're just they're God's emissaries. So it's rooted in.
I mean,
no.
It's true, but I mean, it is their ideas and their impact. I mean, I mean, you could read that in the Rav that we said last time, but that the
creative process.
But then it's even actually in halacha. Okay, there's a halachic proof of it. There's their ideas. Okay, is that a Talmid Chacham is allowed. So okay, a king, just as an example, a king cannot forego the honor that's due to him because the honor is for the kingship itself. But a Talmid Chacham can forego his honor. Why? Because it's his Torah. Okay, and the Gemara darshans a pasuk in Tehillim 1:2, which says,
capital H his or his?
His with a little case,
Okay.
because it says Ki'im b'Torah Hashem chefzo, in the Torah of Hashem is his desire, uva Torah so yehegeh yomam v'lala, but in his Torah with a this is how the Gemara learns it.
This is blowing my mind.
Is his desire, and I'm saying this because halachically, since it is his Torah, it starts off as Hashem's Torah, but when the Chacham learns it, it becomes his Torah. So he has the right to give up his honor for it. You know.
Interesting.
Yeah, but that I mean that's kind of a side point. But the point I'm trying to make here is that like Avram doesn't care about it because it's Abraham and because of ego, but he cares about it because like it is objectively good and true. You know. So Leah, that's what I would say is like. He's not involved in it in like an immortality fantasy type way. It's that he wants the good to last in the world. Like if you told, if you told the, I'm going to give a non-Jewish example. Okay. If you told the founding fathers of the United States that like, as soon as the last one of them is dead, then the British are going to come and just take everything over again and like reduce things back to a monarchy, they would be very sad. Not because their own like creation was destroyed, but because they genuinely believed that they were setting up a good system and they wanted it to last for like future generations, you know? But I do agree with what you're saying that I think this approach that we got from the Meiri is a more practical approach than what we were saying before, because he's saying that the practical approach is for us, that when we talk about tzadikim and when we talk about resha'im, we should talk about them in terms of like, drawing attention to lessons that we learn from them in order to perpetuate their memory, you know, and the lessons that they stood for, you know. So like, it is a much more practical Mishleic idea, you know, even though it's kind of like based on the same thing that we said the first time.
Wait, so who's the audience? Is it the people getting? Go for it. Sorry.
That's okay.
I was just saying how the first one, I could see how it could be more practical if by learning the pasuk, you're ensuring that it happens. Like you're ensuring that the tzadik is remembered for bracha.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I think you are pointing out a weakness in that first argument is turns out that the audience of the pasuk, and maybe this was what was just being asked now, the audience of the pasuk, according to our first interpretation, was not what the subject of the pasuk was not for that same audience. Like the Rasha is not going to learn from this pasuk, and the tzadik is not doing it for like these reasons anyway. Like, and he's not going to be like going around like, "Hey guys, talk about me," you know. So like, you know, so it does make more sense that the audience is for us, for we who are talking about these tzadikim. The only thing I can think of though, in terms of why the first idea could be relevant for us, is let's say, you know, like you said, like you know, I don't know if anyone in here is a tzadik. But in terms of like people chase after their legacies in the dumbest ways, you know? So it is a thing that people like try to give themselves a legacy, and you want to try to develop a legacy that is focused around good, like, you know, ideas and values, you know, because that's really like what is going to cause you to last. And it's not like an all or nothing deal. Like either are a tzadik and you get this or you're not and you don't and you rot, you know. It's like, you know, the more good qualities you have, the more those qualities will like last on. And you see this all around you from people who talk about like their grandparents or their great grandparents that had good qualities, like they do last, you know, throughout the generations. And keeps
is there a version of this pasuk with like a ksil or something else like that? Like, and if so, or if not, perhaps using tzadik and rasha, which are like more elusive categories. It's more of like using them like a paradigm.
Yeah, I don't know, but I do want to show you the Rid, who I think this is the same approach, but he expands it. I think he expands a little bit. Just listen to this short commentary here. Even after his death, when people talk about him, they bless him about his righteousness. Okay, that part's like basically the same. Shem resha'im yirkav. Okay, so rotting means that it continues to diminish. He will not have a name after his death. And he says, Sha'afilu banav misbaishim likros al shemo. Even his kids will be ashamed to be called by his name after his death. Therefore, his name will vanish from the world, just like something that rots vanishes. So that's like a little bit more expansive. That not that not that it has to be a real Russia, but if let's say like let's say you have a guy who's he's a bum and he just like wastes his life, like Naomi was saying. His kids are not going to be talking about their dad, in a positive way. Like, what did your dad do? Yeah, he like nothing, he went to the bar and played pool after work every day until he like died, it's just there's not going to be any like legacy there. So my point in addressing Shana Leah is this is taking it beyond just the really evil people. Just it's a quantitative thing. Like the more righteous you are, the more your memory will be perpetuated for good, and the more wicked you are, the less it will. And this is also addressing what Leah said, which is, yeah, this pasuk is not talking to the person who is a tzadik, but it's talking to each of us who wants to leave behind some legacy, and it's a human nature. Like, yeah, maybe it's a fantasy, but it's a fantasy that we're all programmed with, and like this is a good way to harness that fantasy of like living a life that was worth living, that people will like talk about in a good way and learn from.
Just a objection to that.
Sure.
People who aren't full on resha'im, who are lower down on the spectrum, like let's say like Hollywood stars, where their life is pretty empty, involved just drugs and just terribleness overall. They're not remembered for the bad necessarily. Like their name doesn't rot. A lot of them even have like good reputations after they die. People still idolize them.
You're right. So that is a good counter argument, because that would be saying, and that's also addressing what Shana Leah said, is like that's a fool, and the fool's name is not necessarily going to rot.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
hopefully it will also, but
yeah. Leah just probably messaged me about an example that we were saying from today. I was thinking the exact same thing. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So who is the tzadik and who is the Russian here?
I think it's a spectrum here. You got your righteousness spectrum, where you live a life of justice and goodness and all that other stuff, and like good values, and the Russia is the evil spectrum. And I do think there's a certain point where like Joe just said, like functionally, like it's not going to come true so much. I do actually think you get more mileage out of the tzadik. Like let's say you had a great grandmother who like was not a tzadik, but she was just really, really good at hachnasas orchim, at taking care of guests. That is going to last for some generations. Like they're going to talk about it, and that value is going to pass itself down. So I think you can get that. Yeah, like Esav, exactly. Yeah. And to a certain extent for the resha'im, like, even low level ones, like, I think just because of what Joe said, like people just won't talk about you if you were a deadbeat, You have to do some real evil if you want a bad legacy, Alrighty. I think this is a good stopping point for tonight. And just to sum it up here, let's just, one sentence summary here is that whether this is about legacy or whether this is about how we relate to dead tzaddikim and resha'im, the main point is that because the tzaddikim live their lives based on good ideas and values, then talking about them will cause bracha. It'll cause people to actually like emulate them, and it'll carry on those actions and cause their memory to last, and people will learn from that. And conversely, resha'im who lived like egocentric lives where they wanted to create like a fantasy legacy, that will die with them. And when people remember them, they will only remember them as like cautionary tales or for their bad stuff. And the part that they wanted to be remembered for, like their greatness, that's not going to be remembered. They'll be remembered for like that idiot who like tried to invade like Russia in the winter to make a 1,000-year empire that'll last for 1,000 years. Or who thought that like the Aryan race was superior and his he himself didn't have those feet. Like all these things. So whether it's for those of us who want a legacy or whether it's just governing how we talk about people, then I think the phenomenon in the pasuk is the same phenomenon. It's just a question of like what lesson you draw out of it. And let's try to resuscitate the phrase shem resha'im yirkav, instead of yimach shemo, just to recall the idea. It's a good got to turn the tide to make a good trend.
Also, just on the last thing, I think those terms are actually almost contradictory. Like when you say that his name should be erased, you want it to be totally gone, whereas when you want it to be rotten, or you're hoping that it'll rot, it will exist, it'll just be rotten.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but then that's also the point that Donnie brought up in reference to what Leslie said, which is that we say that about Amalek, that his name should be wiped out, but the Torah commands us to remember him. So it can't be like literally like wiped out. It boils down to like remembering him for the bad, But you're right. On the words themselves, are a little like Yimach Shemo. Well, then why are you saying his name? Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny because with Acher, we actually do call him not by his name. We call him Acher. We don't say Elisha ben Avuya, but or like Jesus, right? Is that there are that wasn't an explanation. I was talking about like the actual Jesus, that people say Oso Ha'ish. They refer to him as that man, or like sometimes the
Voldemort.
Like he who must not be named, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. That is a phenomenon. That's interesting. I don't know if that's connected.
Well, that phenomenon applies to diseases also. People wouldn't say the word cancer for many years because of it was evil,
Yep, that's true. Right. Alrighty. Yeah,
I think there's Gemara in Megillah that there's a certain Agadata about that, where either like Mordechai towards Haman or someone towards someone else like wouldn't use their name because they didn't want to recognize their legitimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, very vague. I'm gonna have to.
That is ringing a bell. Yeah. I mean, look, the Russia loves it when you mention his name. This is the worst punishment to not have his name there. Yep.
Yes. I don't know if it's too late this week, but to connect it to the prior pasuk.
Yeah, too late for me for that.
No, I don't have a suggestion. I thought that you had intent. But the plan was, it does seem though that one's referring to like during their lives and one's referring to after.
Yes, that's you're right. That is a good basic distinction. Is that I just jogged my memory. The previous pasuk was what was it?
Rosh brachos l'rosh tzadik.
Right. Exactly. Right. So during the tzadik's life, he's going to live in a way where people he'll generate goodwill and people will want to do good for him. And the Russia is going to generate the opposite. And that's going to follow them after their death, that the tzaddik will continue to generate bracha, to have that influence on people that he had during his lifetime. Oh, that's another, the question we had in the very beginning, that's really where we can get it from. This is talking about death, because the previous one was definitely talking about life. And the combination of the implications here and that previous one make this sound like it's talking about death. Yeah. Okay, good point. Alrighty, I think I'm done for tonight. And until next week.
Thank
right,
you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much.